Hey, what's up everyone? Alex Ward here with Eternal Guitars and Hot Rod Pickups, and welcome to our brand new series of videos called Pickup Lines. See what we've done there? Pretty good, right? And that's a series of videos where we're going to be talking to some absolutely monster Eternal guitar users. The first of which is sat right next to me, Mr. John Gregson. Woo!
Hello.
So, John is, as you heard in the intro, a phenomenal player. Real pleasure playing with you, I have to say.
And yourself?
Full of charm, isn't he? So he's an absolute monster player. We're going to be asking you loads of questions about what you do, what guitars you have, this absolute beauty of a guitar you have here. We're going to dive into that. But first off, why don't you just tell us a little bit about what got you into playing guitar in the first place and how you came to play guitar rather than any other instrument?
Right, well, it all started when I was about 12. I think I came from a musical family, and there was an awful lot of music in the house. My mother's a professional classical musician, and my brother's an exceptionally fine cellist. So always music going on. My dad is a huge fan of music, and not a musician professionally, but he would always make me cassettes of some great albums that he thought I might like, such as the Beatles' Red Album and Simon and Garfunkel and some Dire Straits and so on. And so I was really into those as a collection of songs, but I still didn't connect it to music making as such. It was just music I really enjoyed listening to. And then one Christmas I got the Queen Greatest Hits Volume 1. And that was it. That was the sound that came through my speakers when I was 12 was, if it was an oboe, I'd be an oboist by now. It was such a transformative experience. I'd hearing Brian May, I just went, that is something I never knew existed and now desperately need in my life. And so I was begging them for months and months and months. I need to learn how to do this. And so when I was 13, they very very kindly got me a guitar, which was a red Stratocaster copy with a rosewood fingerboard by a company called Session Pro, and I don't think it was used by any session pros. If I was to make an editorial statement on that, on the quality of the instrument, but I was the happiest person in the world to get to try that. And I then spent years just trying to chase that Brian May sound, and then delving into the traditional, as a 13-year-old, teenage pursuits of trying to get everything louder and faster as it was before. Mm-hmm. So, the Mark Knopfler side of things, the very melodic but really, really nice flashy segments. And hearing Yngwie for the first time was a huge experience. And then going into the Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelins, and then faster still, Deep Purple, Iron Maiden, Metallica, then Megadeth and Slayer, and then on to Dream Theater, and it was a whole cavalcade after that.
Yeah. So, in terms of like when you were growing up, then obviously you had the Brian May kind of thing going on. Yes. And you were like, this is the guy, this is the music that I want to replicate. So obviously that kind of tone would have been with you all that time, and then as you sort of went on, what other tones were shaping your quest, as it were? Like so you had the Brian May thing going on, and you thought that's the tone, and then did anything else come in that made you think, actually I want to have that sort of tone going on as well?
Yes, I think the overriding influence at that stage was players who treated the guitar as a voice rather than as a texture in a piece of music. So Brian May, Yngwie, John Petrucci, Joe Satriani, Steve Vai, any of those guys, it wasn't so much, there wasn't as much commonality between their sounds as such, but there was always this idea that when the guitar was playing, you were listening to it. Like, it was this soaring melodic sound that almost you could hear the volume behind it. You could hear that they were trying to tame it. It was this wild thing that was exceptionally appealing to hear, and it wasn't till years later that I started to appreciate the rhythm guitar rolls and the textural everything. But to begin with, it's very much melodic sections, and that not a weedy sound, not a bitty thing. It was this strident singing tone that I hearing it even in B.B. King or any of those great players, anyone who just makes a definitive statement with their instrument, and that's always been something I've been searching for since.
You wanted to wail?
Absolutely, yes.
So, being into like the Queen and all that kind of stuff that you and the Dire Straits sort of thing that you were going with as a kid. In your family, then your dad was giving you these cassettes.
Yes.
Were you like the only one who was listening to these things in your family, or was everyone else more of a classical persuasion? You say your brother's a cellist.
Yes.
Were you the guy, like the rock guy?
Yes, I still played classical music, not on guitar, but other instruments. Still played in like school orchestras and so on. And I really liked singing in choirs and everything. I enjoyed. I love the community aspect of the social aspect of making music as much as anything else. But the guitar was very much my thing. It was my hobby. Even if I hadn't been any good at it, even if it was like the hardest thing in the world for me to do, just the sheer physicality of picking up an instrument and just strumming and playing was so enjoyable for me. It was my sort of treat at the end of the day.
Right.
And it's the sort of thing I was always doodling on textbooks, and but it just informed all my teenage years. It was definitely enabled by my father, helping me along the path. And go, well, if you like this, you might.
Well, that's what you wanted.
And we've finally met up in the middle now after all these years with orchestral work I'm doing now, or any thing where I get to put the practice of that child of actually reading music into practice. But definitely the learning of the guitar and that side of it was very much informed from that side of the family.
Brilliant. So when you were at school then, yes. Were there other people like you that you sort of hung around with, and did you find like all these different avenues that you were going into, just sort of the maidens, the priests, were you influenced by people at your school getting into bands and all that kind of stuff?
I joined a band about 3 chords in, I think, and probably there will be some tapes floating around somewhere.
Oh, you got to get them out.
Maybe
not.
No, I think discretion's the better part of valor in this instance. But it was very much the sort of thing we were all discovering together, just trying to figure out how all these sounds work. How do you get distortion? How do you get all these? And I always bugging my guitar teacher at school for, how do you sound like Kurt Cobain? How do you, Joe Satriani did this amazing sound in this song. How do you do that? And everything, and just everything, just voraciously going through all the guitar magazines. Every word was memorized, and every lesson that I had no technical ability to do the sweep picking exercises, but I was going to learn how to do it somehow. I'm sure the secret is in that one transcription. I'm sure it is. It was a very, very obsessive little quest, but a thoroughly enjoyable one.
Well, of course, yeah. I'd stay posted because we're going to find those tapes. I'm telling you, whether you like it or not, they're coming out. So you were talking about this Session Pro,
yes,
Red Special, if you like. So that was your first guitar.
It was, yeah.
So from then, where did you go from that? What was the next guitar that you got?
Well, at the time, I'm trying to think. It was a black Epiphone Les Paul, which was a huge upgrade from there, because they're great guitars. I mean, that was really, I was chuffed to bits to move on up to that. I don't have the guitar anymore, unfortunately, but that was a considerable improvement, especially going from fairly weedy single coils to nice humbuckers as well. Was a big thing. Suddenly you have all this extra stuff to play with, and so that was, and it looked really nice as well, which is always a big thing. If you're inspired to pick up the instrument as well, you're going to make considerable improvements as a player. So that was a big thing. And then I definitely went the way of my influences and went for the RG with the floating bridge and the double locking and so on, which I ended up realising I'd stopped practicing so much because I was afraid of breaking a string and having to restring it myself. So a valuable lesson learned there.
So talking about then from your school days and being influenced by heavier, faster stuff, and just like on a quest for fast. I need it faster. I need it heavier. I need all this kind of stuff. Yeah. What led you into some of the work you do, and how you got to that point?
Right, well, I do a lot of multifaceted work now, so I can't really pin it down to a particular genre or environment, really. Mm-hmm. But the couple of the really big turning points for me were at the time that I was leaving school, and so I was 18, and I met Carl Verheyen at a workshop at the International Guitar Festival, and that was absolutely transformative because, for a start, he's an absolute gentleman and a really, really nice role model to have as a young musician. Very inspiring to hear talk, and with obviously formidable technique, and has done every type of professional gig, and just makes everything sound and look wonderful. And he was really inspiring because I was at a sort of crossroads of not really thinking I was good enough to do anything, because I felt like I was a real bitzer player, a real jack of all trades, where I was interested in lots of country music, I was interested in lots of blues and jazz. I was getting really into jazz at the time, but I'd been practicing all these John Petrucci licks, and I was trying to do everything, but nothing was really sticking because I didn't really feel like I had a musical identity. And hearing Carl talk about it, it's like, oh no, maybe this is all right. Maybe he's forged his own path, but he still sounds like himself, and he's still developing all these facets of his playing. And he was really, really helpful to me, just thinking, oh no, okay, if I just carry on doing this, if I carry on doing stuff I'm interested in, because I was interested in all these things. It wasn't me learning stuff because I was told to. Mm-hmm. It was genuinely, this is my hobby, and if anyone can make the instrument do beautiful things, I want to know how it's done, and I want to delve deeper into it. And Carl was sort of showing me, oh no, it's possible to do this, and it's possible to be not only a working musician, but a very highly regarded one, but who's also inspiring to non-guitarists and guitarists alike. Mm-hmm. So that was a huge influence. And then I went off to university, and at the time, so when I was 18, 19 or so, I was getting hugely into prog rock and Frank Zappa and all that sort of things, which was good because I was studying academic music at the time. So I was getting very into counterpoint and theory and harmony and transcribing lots of stuff, and finding out that, okay, well, Steve Vai was my age when he got the gig with Zappa, transcribing all those wonderful orchestral scores and the polyrhythmic befuddlement of his music. And so I thought, oh, well, if he was my age, maybe I shouldn't be learning his modern stuff. Maybe I should be learning what he was doing at a similar stage. So I got very into transcribing, very into, okay, how do orchestras work? How to notate, how to play and notate speech rhythms on guitar, and I got down that whole rabbit hole. And it was great because it also furthered my academic studies, as well as being a great technical exercise for my hands. And just the idea that if you want something and you dedicate the time to it, it's like, no, this is achievable. It's not witchcraft. It's understanding that you have the means to figure this stuff out. You just have to be really patient and very driven to do it.
It is a little bit witchcraft.
Just a little
bit. Like 5% witchcraft.
But we don't talk about it.
No.
Outside of the hidden scrolls.
Yeah, we don't talk about it. You didn't hear that. So from then, so that's your sort of university days, you're getting more into the kind of more complex side of guitar playing, putting in classical elements and figuring out from people like Carl, who, by the way, I just on the second that if you haven't heard Carl Verheyen play, you got to check him out. I'm saying nothing more, just go check him out. phenomenal. But from hearing from people like him and delving into stuff like Steve Vai, sort of starting to figure out that all these things are intertwined. It's not just this is the rock thing and this is the classical thing and this is the country thing and this is the blues thing. It can all be combined to create your own sort of voice. So going from that then at university, how did that lead you in your working life? Where did you go from there?
Well, from there, I was gigging a lot when I was a student. Just the tiniest little gigs, anything I could, a little tour of the Northeast with a folk duo, or jazz gigs, or amateur dramatics, anything I could, just to play. And then after I graduated, I went straight into teaching, and thoroughly enjoyed that because I love teaching. I love imparting any information that I have, because I like talking about music, as you'll doubtless discover throughout the course of this many-hour day that you'll have to trim down judiciously. I love discussing this, and I love discussing with like-minded musicians, great stuff. And so I really enjoyed the teaching side of things, but I got to a point when I was about 22, 23, where I realised that my practical experience was definitely limited, because I'd gone straight from academic to academic to academic, and there was no real world test for me. I hadn't really put these into practice, and so I took a bit of a punt on a gig offer in London, and I just thought, well, I'm young enough to take the risk and just move there, maybe treat it like a gap year, which I hadn't had, and I thought, well, maybe if I last a year, I can always go back and do the stuff that I know I'm confident in, and know that I tried. When I'm older, looking back on this stage in my life, I can go, I took a big risk, and it didn't work out, but that's fine.
At least you know. At least you know you did it.
Absolutely, it would be much easier to do it at that stage in life without, without family or commitments or anything like that. And it's always easier to go, and then I can have huge pride in myself for at least attempting it. And that was about 9-10 years ago, and it just carried on. It was a smoother transition than I was probably expecting it to be. It wasn't a perfect transition, but it was a definite. It felt like the right time for me to be doing it, and I just thoroughly enjoyed once I got to London, and I just started gigging as much as I could and working with as many people, and realising that a lot of the seemingly disparate habits or skills or experiences I'd had up to that point really transferred to freelance playing. Suddenly all those little things I've been practicing that seemed fairly inconsequential or niche at the time, like learning how to sight read in as many positions as possible on mandolin or whatever, was like, oh, actually that's actually quite a handy thing to be able to do. And then playing in orchestras when you're younger is actually really handy when you're following a conductor. All that metronome practice is really handy when you have to play with a click track in the studio, and so on. All the amateur dramatics at theatre under very inhospitable conditions is an excellent training ground for playing in West End shows and so on. And it all just coalesced nicely, and I think hopefully at this point I'm able to thrive under those stressful conditions, but still retain an element of that 13-year-old rock god wannabe in some capacity, even if it's in an orchestra or anything. Hopefully, I'm able to bring that amount of passion to everything I do. I hope I never lose that.
Well, if you've heard John in a West End show, because you'll have heard Yngwie solo rip out in the middle of The Lion King. That's clearly the way to check it out. So, speaking of the shows that you've done then, what names of the shows have you been involved with? I mean, you've been involved with loads. We were talking earlier, and, this guy's your man. He's been in everything. So
I'm a very theatrical individual. The first named show that I was involved with when I was 24 was a new show called Love Story, which was based on a very classic 70s film, and it was new music written by Howard Goodall, and it was beautifully written for a chamber group, string players and piano and classical guitar, and it was very fortunate I was offered the job, because I wasn't a very proficient classical guitarist at the time, and I just, when the phone call came in for it, so right, okay, this is the test. Got all the study books out, got my nails sorted, and really spent the hours in on that.
Wow,
and that was really nice, because that sort of introduced me to the scene. So I'm glad it went well.
Talk about baptism of fire, right?
Absolutely, and it was a really nice introduction, but it's still one all these years later that I feel is a very representative piece of theatre for me, even if it's not the most well known show. That's one I always have to bring up, because I'm very proud to be involved with it. And I think for my playing it suited me very well. And then since then, most recently I did a lot of years as one of the guitarists on the Bodyguard show. So if you need power ballads. And that's always great, because that's very heavily groove orientated, so you can just sit and just enjoy playing great pop songs. And if you're playing with another guitarist as well, you get all that interlocking sort of work in. So you have to work on your sound production and your time feel. That's really important. So doing that for a couple of years was great, because you get into a real Zen-like approach for configuring your own playing and so on. So I did a lot of those shows, and but nowadays I'm not aligned with any particular gig. I do what we call depping, or what Americans would call subbing. So I cover for a lot of other musicians on their gigs. So I learn up a whole bunch of different gigs, and then I just keep my diary open for when they need a night off, or they've got other work, or they're ill.
He's absolutely hating not having any phone signal down here. Tell you that right now. Gonna miss out on loads.
I am very calm, very relaxed.
Speaking of which, obviously, thank you very much for coming down here and taking the time to talk about this.
It's wonderful. It's a lovely setup you've got here, actually.
Thanks, man.
All the requisite talent boosters are in place. You're filming my right side.
So, speaking about those shows then, and the ones that you dep for, is there any particular show that you sort of hope, the phone rings, you think, oh, I hope it's this one. I hope this is the one I'm going to get today.
I'm genuinely very lucky in that I do enjoy all the different shows I go in on. Shows like Matilda, I go in a lot on. That's a beautiful show. That's a really nice combination of things. Come From Away is stunning. Lots of great mandolin parts in that. And I'm thankful in that while a lot of them I wouldn't want to be doing every single day of my working life, I love being able to flit in and just be a part of a great production with wonderful people, even for a day or a week or whatever. And so hopefully I'm a positive presence in every band I go into, because each one I'm enjoying being a part of, for however small a window of time that is.
I suppose it's always fresh.
Yes.
So if the band, I suppose, have been playing it for years and years and years, and then you come in and you're like, "Hey, we're playing whatever," maybe that can impart a little bit into any jaded individual.
Yes, hopefully I'm providing a very useful service.
Yes,
as well, but it's also keeping me on my game. It's keeping me fresh. It gives me reasons to practice every day, and yes, I mean at this point in my career, it's something I'm enjoying the challenge of. It can be very stressful, but it is very rewarding.
Cool, man. So I think enough time has passed now. I mean, we're looking at this beautiful, beautiful piece of kit here. This is a hand-built guitar by Dave Walsh at Eternal Guitars and Hot Rod Pickups. Check out the t-shirt as well. It's not too shabby. So, John, can you just talk a little bit about this guitar?
With absolute pleasure. Yes. Yes. This is Ladybird, and it's been many years in the planning from my point of view, because I use lots of similar guitars to this for work, because they're the most versatile types generally, if you especially don't know what music you're going to be playing of a concert. And I've bought a number of great instruments from Eternal over the years, but I haven't gone this route before, because each S-type guitar I have does its own thing, which I like, but I've been reticent to go the hand-built route, because there's always been elements I thought, oh, should I include that, or should I know what do I really want in a guitar? And I finally got to a point a few months ago where I'd done enough work with HSS S-types where I thought there are enough compromises here. I'm willing to now put down on paper what I really need. And I contacted Dave, and as usual, very easy to deal with, a real, as you know, real expert opinion. So he's able to guide through any grey areas I had, such as the radius or the pickup specs and things. And it was mainly me spending the time working out philosophically what I wanted an instrument to do, putting those into words, and him then replicating what I put on paper into wood. And I mean, I'm obviously blown away by this. It looks stunning as well. Even the look of it was something where there was so much leeway for error. Where I was saying I want it to be Fiesta red, but not too Fiesta red, and mint green, but not really green, if that could be helpful. And somehow it's come out looking like this, which is stunning, and how I would have hoped it would look.
No, it absolutely. I hope it comes across on camera as well. In the room, it's just beautiful, but sometimes on camera it doesn't come across so well, but it really does look
Fiesta
great.
red, especially, which can look exceptionally orange under certain lighting. But
So fingers crossed.
But I didn't want it to look. This is the picky nature of me. I didn't want it to look too red, because then it would look like a cheap red, which I don't like if it's too dark. So this, yeah.
It's great. It really is. So, okay, I mean, what's it made out of? What kind of woods have you got going on here? I'm assuming it's a rosewood fingerboard.
Yes, rosewood fingerboard, and I must have a thing for red guitars like this, because they've seemed to follow me throughout my life with the rosewood fingerboards, and I use a lot of maple fingerboards for work. I really like the sound and really like the feel of them. But I thought for this instrument, rosewood's the way to go, and it just goes with everything.
Throw back to the Session Pro.
Absolutely, my origin story.
Yeah.
Is, you can't quite escape it. And but the one issue I've had with a lot of these types of guitars is the bodywood, which is normally older, and I am a big fan of ash in these bodies. I think it resonates better. I think not better. I shouldn't say better. It resonates more to my preference, and I think it allows a much a bigger sound, but a broader range of tonalities. I think just for how I play, this is ash, and it sounds great. It's very light as well. I'm not a hefty chap, and it's a very, very achievable weight of instrument. And so then the next thing is the most notable feature, I think, really for me, is the neck, which is hefty. It is. He carved it himself from a bigger spoon, and this, as Ian Fath would say, there's something very totemistic and pleasing about having a large hunk of wood in your hand. So it's and this is the main thing that actually drew me to Dave and Eternal, was I'd never played a neck that was so thick until the first time I picked up one of his guitars, and talking about pickup lines, where has this been all my life? It was like I didn't realise that a guitar could be that comfortable until they put it in my hand and went, okay, this is the route I'm going now for this. And now I play a lot of production instruments, I play a lot of other guitars, and it's not impossible for me to play them, but I always notice that it feels like my thumb has a bit further to go.
Right.
My hand just has to do a little extra work, and this is a very chunky neck.
I've got this image, you saying that, I've got this image of Dave, at the beginning of Commando, Arnold Schwarzenegger with a tree on his, practical tree on his shoulder. That's Dave getting the piece of wood for this.
It's an uncanny mental image. And basically, yes, he brought me the tree, and he said, when do I stop shaving? I said, don't even start shaving. That's what I want. And it's great. It is so playable. I can completely understand that if this was released as a signature model, it wouldn't sell very well, because it is really designed for my hands. But that's what I've been going for after all these years. I feel I've earned the right to pick up a guitar that feels it's comfortable just to me. No one else needs to play it. I hope other people want to play it, but maybe not while I'm on a gig. But, and so even just to go with the aesthetics, it just looks comfortable, and it feels really comfortable. What else? What else do we have with the vintage tuners, which I'm a big fan of? I've sort of moved away from locking tuners. I just think I like the look, I like the sound, I like the feel of them. I think they hold their tuning really well. We've got a Callahan bridge, which is set up for mild floating action.
The difficult second album by John Gregson.
Absolutely, the difficult tone bend upwards,
Yeah.
and or the difficult bend back down from the tone bend up. And the feel of it's really nice. Again, there's really nice tone transference through the guitar. It doesn't feel like it's a collection of isolated parts. It's very much one big acoustic instrument.
Well, I think just to take that as an aside, I think that's a big part of all of Dave's guitars. The ones that I've played, especially when I played them acoustic, the resonance in them is superb.
Yes.
I mean, they ring out for ages. Sustain on that.
Yes.
It really is that. And
there's
it just
a real purity to it.
Yeah, and it just goes to show, the quality of the instrument you're playing. And the other good thing is you talk about the neck and not necessarily realising that that's the neck you wanted, and then all of a sudden you play it and that is the neck I've been after. I've found that as well. You go into the workshop, and if you ever get a chance to nip down to Chichester, UK, and check out the workshop, you can go in and pick up a guitar, and all of a sudden you realise that everything you thought was true about your preferences is not true at all. Like for me especially, I went in thinking that T-type guitars weren't really my bag,
right?
And then I went in and picked up some of his off-the-shelf T-types, and I was like, well, these are just like magic, completely not what I was thinking. So I think that
it was a T-type that did it for me. That was my entry point for them, which is still an absolute blinder of a guitar for me.
So well, speaking of that, then, I mean, how this guitar is obviously brand new.
Yes.
I mean, you've not had it very long at all, have you?
No, we've just moved out of the honeymoon period, and we're still on speaking terms.
But yeah, so you've not had this very long. How does it compare to the other Eternal guitars you have? I mean, how many other Eternal guitars do you have?
This is the fourth, and the other three are the T-type, which was the initial one, Baxter for anyone counting at home. The second was a JM type, the offset body type, which is Colin. And the third is a TV Yellow Junior with a trapeze tailpiece, and that's Eddie.
And this being called?
This is Ladybird.
Right, so if any of you guys can spot the link,
there is a theme.
Feel free to comment.
There is no prize for spotting the theme, but there is a theme. And the other three are fantastic. One thing they have in common is that they're pretty simple guitars. Is that they've got a real purity of vision to them. Mm-hmm. The T is it's got acoustic chambering in it, but it doesn't have an F hole in it. Again, massive neck, but it sounds exactly like you'd expect that guitar to sound. It's a very such vibrant colours, and it really sings and it roars and it does everything you want that guitar to do. And you go to the bridge and it's a real beefcake of a guitar. The JM has visually all the accoutrements you'd expect, but they're all deactivated, all the extra sliders, and the floating bridge no longer floats. It's the same bridge, but it's been stuck down with some motorcycle piping of some description, which I'm nowhere near cool enough to know what it actually is. So it functions like a hardtail guitar, and then it's just standard JM type pickups in there. But again, that does everything I want that guitar to do, and it looks beautiful as well. And then the Junior has the trapeze tailpiece, which has a huge effect on the sound. It really has a sort of almost jangly but almost honky sort of timbre to it, which makes it amazing for recording. And it's got the single P90 pickup that Dave wound, which has enough presence and bark to it, but is really versatile for a single pickup guitar. So I use them an awful lot for recording if you just need to layer up parts, because they really work as an aggregate. They work really well. The T-type makes the most, sees the most combat. That's an exceptionally versatile and well-played guitar. So this is the most complicated one, because this is the one which has more. This has moving parts. So
talk us through some of those moving parts. What's going on?
So,
because I mean, to look at it looks like your standard S-type Fiesta red, but not too red.
No.
Guitar. So what's going on under the hood here?
Right. Again, these are small changes, but they're ones that make a big difference. They really cascade into something larger for me. Once we move away from the neck and so on, so the immediate feeling of the feel of the guitar, which is big for me, the pickups are a big feature. So I have a number of types of guitars like this with humbuckers in the bridge, and as soon as you mix pickup types in a guitar, you're presented with an immediate compromise, because there's going to be at least two distinct voices in the guitar that you either live with or you get round with extra switching or pedals or different playing techniques and so on. There's nearly always going to be an EQ shift when you change from a single to a humbucker, and there's probably going to be a big volume disparity as well. And I've been getting really worked up with the volume disparity with my other humbucker guitars, because if it's a two humbucker guitar, you can deal with it because it's the same sound but the neck position or something. Yeah. And I EQ my amps to sound good with the neck pickup, which is a great Strat player tip. In general, if you've got 3 single coil pickups. So on my S-types with humbuckers, that doesn't really work, because as soon as you move to the bridge, you're presented with this mid-range spike and a big volume jump, which is useful for solos and useful for really distorted parts, but it means that you have to tread carefully when changing the pickup, because as soon as you go down to position 5, you're presented with that volume boost. And if I only wanted to go to position 4, you have to go down and then up.
Yeah.
At which point you've probably already deafened the audience.
Yeah.
Or at least if you're on in-ears yourself.
And it's even worse when it's just for a tiny little moment, isn't it?
Yes, because everyone can bathe in your mistake. They all know. They all know. So I was very interested in, part of my thesis to Dave initially was I want a guitar which is a very congruent collection of sounds. I want it to sound like sweeping the 5-way switch with 3 single coils, where you get 5 variants on one instrument. You're not going, here's your blues sound, here's your funk sound, you're just hearing a nice contour of sounds, which you can't get when you've got a humbucker in a bridge, because it immediately goes variant, solo, and I was trying to get away from that. Just thinking, well, if I've got a solo coming up, I've got a pedal for that.
You want the pedal to do it.
And hopefully I've bought the sound team a drink, so they're hopefully not going to turn me down for a solo. It's much easier than having to practice. And so what we went for with the compromise is having any form of single coil with a humbucker is going to present a volume difference. So we have 2 overwound 60s voiced single coils, which are beefier and louder sounding than I would normally have a single coil, but they work in this trio because the bridge is a PAF spec nickel covered humbucker, which is voiced very dark, and it allows it feels like a more honest representation of the guitar than it doesn't feel like it's adding its own character. It's a beautiful sounding pickup, very pleasingly microphonic in all the right ways. It has that sort of old humbucker sort of feel to it, and it meshes really well with the single coils, and that's very important because I need it to be comfortable for me playing. I don't want to have to make loads of adjustments while I'm playing. That takes me out of the moment of playing. So on that note, I really dislike coil taps on guitars. Not the act of coil tapping, but the physicality of having to do it. I don't like to have extra switches on the guitar. Push-pull or push-push is something that's going to screw me over when I change pickup and hit it, or I forget to hit it.
Yeah. So you kind of want like something that's you can just play. You don't have to worry about, right, now I've got to push this button, I've got to flick this switch.
I want each sound to be usable, and I also want it to be the ideal representation of that sound. So a coil-tapped humbucker is not an ideal sound for me. I'd rather have a single coil for that. So I'd rather have a guitar that has a really good bridge pickup.
Gotcha.
Which sounds good. I don't want to compromise on that. But likewise, I don't like the combination of humbucker and single coil. So position 4 is problematic on a few of my guitars, because it either doesn't coil tap or you have to hit an extra button to coil tap it, which means going from 5 to 4 involves 2 extra motions.
Yeah, push a button, flick a switch.
And I'm already a bar late by that point, or I've dropped my pick or something. And so Dave very kindly automatically coil tapped the humbucker in position 4.
Brilliant.
I can't coil tap it in 5. I don't need to. It's not a sound I'm looking for. But I will always have it coil tapped in 4. So saving, it's become idiot proof now.
Yeah.
It's now something that automatically happens and I don't need to think about it. And it means that if I were to overshoot the landing pad and go to 5 instead of 4 for a funk rhythm, it's not going to deafen me.
Yeah, it's not the end of the world.
No. And I think the whole instrument, as I said, is a very consonant instrument. It sounds like one complete great guitar rather than a collection of lesser instruments that are handy but not ideal.
Yeah, so what it sounds like through the guitars that you have and this one here, it sounds like you've got 4 very unique instruments that do their thing really well. I mean, this one potentially has a few more gubbins on it that allows it to do a couple more things, but you know, this is a guitar for X style and your telly is a guitar for the other gig, and you know, so on and so forth. So you've got 4 very separate instruments there.
Yes.
That you can pick from should you need.
And you can use them for lots of different things, which I really like because they're just comfortable and they're really nice because they're all very vintage spec wiring. There's no fancy noiseless things going on or anything. So that can limit the environments you play them in. Certain venues are not going to be hospitable places for that sort of wiring.
Yes, watch out for the lighting.
But again, that's very conscious on my part. I like the feel of those. I like the sound of them, and
you could always just move away. You turn.
To another venue. Yes. Just inch away slowly until the noise dissipates.
Outside, the fire is going.
That's how they used to record fade outs on albums. And, so in general, that pickup voicing I was very particular about it, and Dave was disarmingly honest about how he voiced them. Where when he handed me the guitar, his first words were, "I've made it to your specs. It's not for me, but it might. This is literally what you asked for." And fair play to him. I mean, that's standing by your product because he really did make it to my specs, and this is actually how I want it to sound. But he was just giving me the out in case I then realised that my words were lies, sweet lies.
Well, this is a great thing about Dave. I mean, I found it when I went to get my guitar made, is that I went in and I knew what I wanted, like you. Some of the stuff I knew what I wanted, but I didn't quite know how to say what I wanted. But he was able to sort of, I could take a guitar and say, I wanted to do this, and he'd be like, oh, I get what you're talking about. But what he's also good at is, look, I understand that this is what you want, but I'm just going to tell you now that it might potentially not be what you want, but I'll happily make it for you. And he doesn't let his personal tastes get in the way of your build. No. I think that's what I'm trying to say.
But they're always available on demand.
Yeah.
Which also, if you've never gone down the custom route before, unless you have so much money to spend that you can afford to just keep on chipping away at it until you get it right, you get option paralysis. You really do. You can look at, I've got every option in the world. Now, how do I whittle it down to one instrument?
Yeah.
And which is probably how I ended up with so many guitars. And I'm not an expert when it comes to pickup winding or finishes or anything like that. I can articulate enough to say what I'm not an artist, but I know what I hate. And Dave was great because I could just say to him, look, I ultimately trust your experience in this, so please correct me if what I'm saying is unobtainable or is going to be not worth it in the end. And it's really nice because we've ended up with an instrument where I was willing for lots of compromise for it, but we haven't ended up with it. We've managed to skirt past compromises now. It's just a great instrument that I'm glad I waited this long to spec out.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Measure really twice, cut once.
Which I don't always do. So this guitar then, you've not had it long. Have you been using it in your gigs since you've got it?
I've
used still yet to be out.
I have used it a few times. I haven't had a chance to use it in full anger properly. I've used it on a few regular gigs where I know the sound requirements, and I've been able to use it and exceptionally happy with it. And it's always a treat working with other guitarists as well because you get to hand them to them and go, have a look at this, and come on. And it's marvelous, but it hasn't seen as much use as I want yet, just because of the work that for the last few weeks it's been very heavy classical. For the last few weeks, I've been very much only seeing the side of a flamenco guitar.
Yes.
So
classical is not exactly Fiesta Red S type.
No,
territory. Not yet.
Not yet.
Break the rules. Prog. Go that line. 13-year-old self, bring it out. That's what they want.
That's how I would have played flamenco back in those days. So it's been gradually introduced into the gigging environment. But it's even just spending the time to get used to it and letting it settle in as well. I'm glad we waited a few weeks before we recorded this video, because it's I'm better placed to talk about the instrument as well, because I understand it a bit better, and I'm still figuring out the best way to approach certain sounds on it. But every time I've played it in under combat circumstances, it's been a very pleasurable experience.
Marvellous. So, you heard John play absolutely phenomenally in the intro. I think you'll all agree with that. And you'll hear him again in the outro, because we're kind like that. We're going to treat you twice. So a little bit about what we're using in this video. It's completely black here. I've had to move the cornford away to fit this fine specimen of a man in this position. But the amps are actually behind us, so I'll post a picture of that for you. We're using the Cornford MK52 head and Matrix NL212 cab for John, and for my little rhythm parts in the intro I was using the Matrix VB800 into an NL12, and then both of those were mic'd with an SM57. But John also has a rather sort of dinky pedal board, but it looks like it can do quite a lot of stuff. So I'll put a picture of this for you guys so you can see. But John, could you just take us through some of the stuff you've got in here? Maybe give us a few sounds with how they work with the pickups on this guitar?
With gusto. I've sort of gone away from a lot of the trend of a lot of players recently. I don't have a monolithic pedal board which does everything. Much in the same way with my guitars, I'd rather have great ones for certain situations. I don't want to be bringing one that takes up an entire stage and then use two sounds on it. And so again, it's that what we were saying earlier about purity of vision. I like to have a few nice things that sound good. I would
suppose as well in the gigs that you do, like the theatre stuff, space is a
big
thing.
Yes, I don't take up much space, but everything around me does. So I need to be mindful of that. So I'm using a little nano board that's very just minimalistic. I have the main sounds that you're hearing for this, even with the clean stuff, is a King of Tone, the exemplary King of Tone, into the Cornford, which is a very pleasing combination. And then I have I'm not a fan of chorus, but you need chorus to work. So I have a micro flanger, which is set up as a sort of Leslie. So this is my clean sound, and then I have the micro flanger set up as my for my budget Landau.
That is great. That sounds so luscious in this room. I hope that comes across in a recording.
It's a very different sound to chorus, but it overlaps enough that I can get away with it, and I love the sound of it. It's a very it does my minimalist modulation needs very nicely. And then besides the King of Tone on here, I have a Timmy pedal, again famed Timmy, which is always on a pedal board or in a gig bag because it solves problems. Sounds very nice. Next to that, I have a Mythical Overdrive, which is a very famous clone with a K. And again, that's
really... I wonder.
Absolutely. So tone is in the goop. And, and it's great because, I'm using it as a clean boost. Generally great for solos, but it gives you that mid-hump, which is just fantastic if you just need to just stand out a little bit more. And then running into the latest acquisition, which is the Source Audio True Spring, which has replaced an analog delay. It was a way huge Echo Puss, which sounds lovely, got that whole sort of memory man type thing going on. And I'm just rather besotted with this digital spring reverb because it does this beautiful, it's running all the time and into the front of the amp. It just sounds lovely. It's got some tremolo on it, which is accessible on the on the front without having to use any apps or anything. So
that's such a big deal.
It's a winner. It runs on 9 volts and it's 150 milliamps. So
we love that.
My small power supply underneath copes with it. It just sounds nice. It embiggens the sound nicely.
Nice. So I noticed on the King of Tone here, the channel that's always on is the right hand side.
Yes.
Channel. Do you kick on the left hand side at any
point?
I
do absolutely. So yeah, all the clean sounds, as I said, are done with the volume control on the guitar. I much prefer using the volume control on the guitar rather than cascading gain stages. So if I was to turn that up, that's now we're cooking with gas. So I then have the yellow channel set up as a bit of a solo boost, with a bit more gain on it. So I just need a bit more hair around the edges. And that's considerably under volume. You can really give it a lot more goosing from the pedal, but it's thickening the sound in a nice way. It makes it slightly more flattering to play, which might be helpful for solos if I haven't warmed up. And but it's just handy. I love the way the pedals are voiced. It shelves the right frequencies and accentuates the right ones, and it cleans up really nicely with the volume control, which is so important for me. If I forget to switch it off, I can still play.
Yeah. So you've obviously got the Mythical Overdrive and the Timmy. Do you stack these then at any point, or because you were saying you don't particularly want to cascade the gains?
Yes, I would stack them the same way I would stack the King of Tone, which would be set one up as the bass sound, and then use another one, not really to add distortion, but just I'd add it afterwards to just add a bit more, more of a push, a bit more presence, and so on. I find if you do it the other way and you start to oversaturate your main sound by driving the front end of it, it can sound a bit undefined or a bit bloated. I'm always trying to get away from that. I think it can be nice at lower volumes, but especially when you get to gigging volume and your amp's working really hard and speakers flapping all over the place, adding that much extra compression and so on is just going to make everything undefined, and you have to really tame it. So I would use it as a solo boost rather than cascading.
Right, gotcha.
So much. So it's the same way I'm using the King of Tone.
Cool. So can we hear the Timmy on its own then?
Certainly, yes.
Maybe through like a little selection of the pickups just to hear what they sound like.
Yeah. So here's the clean sound with the neck pickup. I'll just move through the pickups.
Come on.
Position 2. Middle. Position 4, middle and bridge coil tapped.
And then, that's great, that.
Yeah, and I'm quite partial to it myself. And then the bridge humbucker in full force. And so now with the Timmy, which is a much flatter EQ to the King of Tone, And I've set a slightly attenuating bass and a little bit of treble with no extra clipping on the pedal.
I mean, you can really, in that, just with that example there, you flip straight from the bridge to the neck, and in the room, there might be a small difference in volume, but it's much less audible than, like you were saying earlier, if you had a traditional bridge pickup.
There's a very audible timbre shift. The tone of the guitar definitely changes. It definitely goes into a very presence-filled single coil, but there's no oh, where's my sound gone?
Yeah, the body doesn't duck out or anything. And I think that the beefiness of those single coils is, you can really hear that.
Yeah, they're driving the amp. They're really so that's the Timmy, which is set up as a fairly modest overdrive. It's a very handy pedal. The EQ on it is so powerful, and so I always keep it in a gig bag in case I'm given an amp which is less than forgiving or is problematic on stage. You can just cut the right frequencies. So I use it less as a booster and more as a shaper.
Right, gotcha.
And then the mythical overdrive set up with 0 gain, so it's not actually providing any. The clipping isn't happening, but it's just giving a nice little mid shape to it. It's adding a huge amount of body to the sound, which with this guitar I don't really need as much of that, so that's why I'm not using it so much in this demonstration. If I had a slightly weaker sounding guitar, that's a very handy pedal for that.
So would you use that potentially as, like, if you were doing a clean solo or something, to keep that in to
because it
drive the mids a bit? And...
Yes, it's giving you the right. It's allowing your guitar to sit really nicely with the band without necessarily making it louder or clipping your amp.
Cool, man. So, I mean, one thing that I didn't mention as well is that John's going just directly into the input of the clean channel of the Cornford, so he's not using the FX loop for the reverb or anything. It's going straight, into the front of the amp. It sounds great.
Yes, it sounds the reverb going into the front of the amp is rather breathtakingly clean. It's that amp takes pedals really well.
Oh, it does. Really nice. It's a great amp. Yeah. We all know about Cornfords. They're all fantastic amps. So I mean, that's great sounding pedalboard, great sounding guitar. Obviously, you've got all the 3 other guitars. It's 4 including this, right? So 3 other guitars that you have. You've only just got this one. Do you have another one on your side in the horizon? Yes, it's got to be, isn't it?
I always have guitars in the horizon.
Never ends, does it? Never ends.
It's nothing to find. It's a very hazy horizon. I probably need my eyes tested. I'm very tempted by other pickup combinations. So maybe something similar to this in a different colour, maybe. I don't know, but with maybe different voicings. I don't know. We will see. But unfortunately, or very fortunately, depending on who you ask, I've just taken delivery of a beautiful classical guitar. So that's set me back on the guitar acquisition for a while.
But watch this space.
Because I'm a responsible grown-up man.
Yes, sure.
Sometimes.
Well, yeah, we believe you, John. We believe you.
So, but for now, if I just have to suffice with this, I am still very, very happy.
Cool.
Yes, this is a game changer for me.
And I mean, I'm sure we'll have you back again with potentially the other guitars. A couple more videos looking at those because they sound absolutely delicious, and you can see pictures of them on the Eternal Facebook page and the website. You can go check out how stunning they look. I mean, that TV Yellow Junior is.
Oh, it begs to be played.
Yes, yeah. I mean, you were saying that wasn't a custom build. That was one that you saw off the shelf, and you were like, "I'm having that."
That was off the shelf, and I saw it on Eternal's Facebook page actually, and immediately called up Dave and went, did you build that for anyone? He went, no. I said, right, I'm buying it.
Yeah, keep it where it is.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, do you accept cash? Ka-ching. It is mine. Oh yes, it is mine. And
it's been a day full of that. But yeah, so we'll get John back, absolutely, have him play through some of those absolutely stunning guitars. But in the meantime, like, where can people go to find more about you? Do you have websites? Are you playing any particular shows coming up?
Yes, well, I internet, so there are ways of catching me online.
An interneting man.
I'm an interneting man. I'm a man of culture and upbringing, and I'm not as prevalent online as a lot of people, but I do have the Facebooks and the Instagrams and the Twitters and so on. John Gregson Guitar on Instagram, Face Sake on Twitter, which is, and my website is www.johngregson.co.uk, traditional spelling, and there are ways of finding me on there. There are a couple of links on my website for videos and lessons and so on. There's a YouTube channel that's linked on there for odd bit when I was carrying on doing tuition online. Probably frustratingly hard to get hold of these days, but it's how I like it at the moment. And work-wise, I am never really doing the same thing 2 days in a row, so it's quite hard to pin me down for that side of things. But I'm just about to start working with English National Opera, so for the next 6 weeks or so, I will be in one place. For any stage door stepping anyone wants to do. I mean, but yes, that's my meager web presence, but it is a web presence.
It is there. It exists.
I do exist.
Well, we'll link all that. That will be in the description. It's probably appeared on this video somewhere if I've done my job properly. And also, you can, if you love the look of this guitar or the guitar that I was playing, or any of the guitars that you see on the Facebook page or anything like that, you can go to the Eternal Guitars website, which is down here, and you can check out what Dave's built. You can also email him if you want to ask him for a build yourself, and all the pickups as well. You don't have to get a guitar. The pickups are available individually, so if you love the sound of these pickups or any of the pickups that you hear in any of the videos that we do, you can absolutely go on the website and check them out. But listen, John, that's been an absolute pleasure. And that camera's just turned off, so we've done this exactly right. So until next time, take it easy.